Hi there, Laurie here, and today we're going to be painting a lovely branch like this with a holiday ornament. And so we're going to be working on Graphics DuraBright Black. And you may be thinking, alcohol inks are transparent. How are they going to show up on the black? Well, we're going to use the Snowcap mixative or a white mixative. Several of the alcohol ink providers have a white ink. I know Jacquard has one, T-Rex has one, and Nara has one. But I have in my stash close by my Ranger, so that's what I'm going to use today. So I'm going to use Ranger, Snowcap, and then I'm going to use, as for alcohol ink colors, I'm going to have some reds, some greens, a tiny bit of yellow, some browns. So what I have here ready to go is I have espresso teak wood, I have crimson watermelon, lettuce, meadow, and mojito, and I also have a little lemonade here in case I need to add some little highlights. And then we're going to close out with some Pinata rich gold. This is my actually favorite alcohol ink gold mixative. Nara makes one as well that I really like a lot. And their brand of gold is very good as well. So those are my two favorites. So that's what I'm going to be using today. I have inks preloaded here in a palette. I do that a lot, let it dry out, because I like to do what is kind of like dry brush painting. And a lot of times that just means that I just use a little bit of alcohol on a brush and I pick up some of the ink, wet it with the alcohol, and then I can paint with it and have more control. So in this palette, I just poured two new wells with the Snowcap mixative, because that's what we're going to need to get started. And you're going to need a few brushes, so I just pulled out a few brushes. I don't know exactly what sizes I'm going to use yet. I've cut down this DuraBright to a 5x7 so I can work small and you can see everything on the screen. I love this black DuraBlack. It really makes the images pop when you paint with it. So it's very good thing to use. I'm going to rearrange my palette here a little bit because I'm right-handed. I want to have my paints on the right-hand side. I also like to keep a little bit of isopropyl alcohol in a container. So I have some containers here, and I always have a bottle of isopropyl alcohol sitting here ready to go because I do a lot of alcohol ink painting. Okay, so I'm not going by any reference photo or anything today. I am just going to paint from my imagination, but if you're more comfortable with a reference photo, go ahead. You can go to Pixabay or Unsplash or some of those other sites that allow you to use reference images, or if you have an image yourself, that's even more preferable. So what I'm going to do is start off with a small brush, and I love to paint with filbert brushes, and I have them in all different sizes. Filberts and rounds are my most favorite ones. I'm going to just start off with my little sketch here with a number 4 filbert by Simply Simons. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, because my ornament's kind of going to be the focal point, I want to sketch it in, and so I get the size and scale of everything. And I'm going to sketch it using this, I have this Snowcap in my well here. And so I'm going to just start painting a little round ball here with the Snowcap. And it helps to let some of this Snowcap dry a little bit in the palette. So if you don't have one of these palettes like this, just get a regular palette, even like a little paper plate or a plastic plate or something that's disposable. Anything works. Just pour a little bit of the Snowcap in and let a little bit of that alcohol in it evaporate out so it's a little thicker. You can control it a little bit better that way. So what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to make this as round as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, most ornaments are perfectly round, so I'm trying to be as precise as possible here. All right, so that's a good size. So now what I need to do, let's see, we had to have a little bit of we want a little thing at the top. Okay, that's good. Now I want a branch coming out over here that I can hang my ornament from. So it needs to come, I want to have it come up like this, kind of down. I'm just sketching it in with this white, just really roughly. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, when you're doing these branches, you want to do it like you're painting a tree, where you have little branches that come off the edges and then they branch out even more. And these are going to come out all over in all directions. Now I like them to be thinner towards the edge, the end. So that particular one was a little bit kind of fat, but well, I'll work with it. And I like to have this pretty opaque because I'm going to come back over it with a darker color like the teak wood for the branch. And having it, the more opaque this part is, the more my inks are going to show up on that background. So that takes a little bit. You may want to work with a smaller brush than I'm doing here. That's totally your call. I'm just doing a demo to give you some inspiration, and hopefully you'll give this project a try. And if you do, on your own Facebook, it'd be great if you could share it with us there. We're the Alcohol Ink Art community on Facebook. We also have a website where all these demos from the graphics collaboration are posted too. So if you think you might have missed some of these, this is like 10 days of graphics demonstrations and a lot of talent. So we have our whole talented team putting together demonstrations for this event. And I would like to do a shout out to Graphics for providing us with the tools necessary to do these demonstrations so that we can bring them to you. And then, you know, this is also kind of our way of showing our appreciation for our community. We have a huge community. I think the last count was about 55,000 members. And a huge portion of those are active in our Facebook group. So, you know, shout out to the community, everybody there. If you're in there, we are very thankful for you and everything that you contribute to our community. So I'm going to have this be kind of a pine tree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. Okay, so this one is a rigger. And I'm going to just wet that a little bit with some alcohol. And then I'll dip it into my Snowcap. And then what I'm going to do is come over here and start just painting in some wispy little needles. So if you notice when I'm doing these, I'm starting at the kind of the base of where the limb is and coming out towards the edge. That way it's smaller towards the edge. And then there are varying opacities that's going on here. If you have to, what I do, it's easier for me is if I turn some of it upside down. We're going to fix how thick that limb is by just kind of painting over it with these needles. I sped up a little, I jumped a little bit ahead so you can not have to sit and watch me paint all these little pine needles, but you just go around and paint them in. Okay, so one of the things that I also decided to do was kind of bring this branch over the ornament a little bit. Can't really see that, and I'm not going to worry about it right away until I'm done with the ornament. But I think I'm okay with the branches and the leaves, at least the shapes of them. I'm going in some areas back with my filbert brush and just kind of making it a little more opaque. Now we're going to need to let this completely dry, and then we can come back in and do our, this is our underpainting. So we're underpainting with the Snowcap, and then we're going to come back and do our detail work on top of it. Go. One more thing, I want to put a few berries in here. I think that's a nice little accent, so I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of place those in around. Let's put some over here. Maybe some right in here. These are a little bit smaller over here. Okay, so now I'm going to let this dry for a couple minutes, probably about 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'll come back and we'll do the next part. So while I'm still waiting for that to dry, I'm actually going to use a dental tool. This is just like a dental tool that you can get on Amazon. Just search dental tip tools. But the reason I like it's got a very, very fine tip on it, and it allows me to go through and just kind of clean up where I got out of lines here a little bit. So I can go in with it with some alcohol on it and kind of clean up my mistakes where I got out of lines. Okay, but I did freehand this, so it's not going to matter a whole lot. We're going to sprinkle some gold glitter over the whole thing when we're done. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but that one was sticking out very blatantly, and so I wanted to fix that. Okay, so I let it dry for about 10 minutes. And I'm going to start off with some teak wood. And in my palette here, I have a little chart here that tells me where my colors are. I have teak wood down this bottom corner down here. So I'm going to start with that. And I wet my brush with some alcohol. And then I tap it off onto the paper towel. Then I just go in here. And when I start to move the brush around in the dried out palette, it wets the ink for me, but it doesn't make it super fluid. So that way I'm able to control it. And I can start coming in here and just kind of dabbing it in here. And I'll come down these edges like this so it follows along the limb. I'm going to avoid my berries there that I've painted in. I'm going to want to make sure that I get all of the white part covered, and we'll end up coming in and doing some touch up at the very end, but just going to paint this in here on this bottom. You don't want to push too hard with it, so if you find that you're almost scrubbing, you need to go back and put more ink on your brush, because you don't, if you start scrubbing with the wet brush, you're going to pick up that white underpainting, and we don't want to do that. We spent way too much time for that. Okay, so I did it one pass, and then I'm going to come back and just kind of tap in. So I've got a decent amount of this on my brush, and the teak wood's pretty dark. And to give it different tones, so I came over with a light coat, but then I'm going to go back in and just tap around into that tree limb. I'm going to have the darkest portion of it at the very bottom, because I think we're going to have a light source coming from, you know, this direction coming in. So we're going to have a light right here on our ornament, and that light kind of is going to hit the top of these branches a little bit, but the underneath part needs to be darker to make it look more realistic. So that's kind of what I'm doing, is come along the bottom and just darkening it up a little bit. That's going to also give this limbs a little bit of dimension, because it's going to look more rounded. And when you start to do this, you'll start to get a feel for how much paint you need on the brush and how much you don't need. And it's really hard for me to describe that when I'm demonstrating, like how much pressure I'm putting down or how much ink I have on the brush. But I have had to go in a few times and re-wet things and re-ink up my brush. So I'm not going to make a fuss over this branch any more than what I've already done. Not necessary. So next thing, I'm going to come back and I'm just going to do a wash of green. First wash of green over the little pine needles. And I want it to stand out really vibrantly on this black background. So I am using Mojito. Mojito is a Ranger color, and I have it in my palette. It's also available in the bottles. This is one of the colors that they make available in their large bottles as well. Okay, so I'm going to turn it this way so that I'm not putting my hand over the image. And I'm just going to do a brush over all of this white area in the same direction as the pine needles are now. I don't want to have that kind of wet. So let's put a little out. If you really want to wet a decent amount in the palette, you just put a little more alcohol in there. You could use blending solution too if you're partial to that. I find when I'm doing this technique that the alcohol works best. And working on the black substrate like this, it kind of does a little bit of the work for you, because it puts depth into the image. And I'm just liking the way this is looking really inky, but also detailed a little bit. And I did very little to make that happen, as you witnessed. So we got that. That looks pretty good. What I like to do after I've done that is come back now with a little bit of a darker green. Yeah, let's use citrus. Citrus is a good color for this. And I didn't originally pull citrus out. I pulled lettuce out. So if you made note of that, you might want to kind of check that. But what I like about the citrus is it's got like a little bit of a yellow tone to it. So it tones down this green a little bit. And I'm just kind of tapping over the top in the direction of the pine needles. And I missed that little one right there, so I'm going to come back with a little bit more of the mojito and just kind of tap it in there. There we go. So you see what's happening with the citrus on top? It's just giving it just a little bit more interest and dimension, and the hint that light's hitting it too. And this citrus, I can come over the top a little bit too, because it's got that yellow tone, and it'll help it look like there's some light hitting. And it also complements those pine needles. Okay, so I'm good with that right now. So let's go over here and let's paint in our berries next. So I'm going to use watermelon for that. And I'm just going to come in real light to start with. I need to get some of my juice going over here. What happens is if it's too dry, you'll end up rubbing up that Snowcap underneath, and that's not what I'm trying to do here. So I've got just the right amount on our brush. Just going around these little berries. There we go. Starting to look good. We'll add some more dimension to those in just a second when they start to dry. But while I have the watermelon wet, I'm going to go ahead in my bulb and I'm going to add in some watermelon here. Just going to go around and paint the whole thing. We're going to come back in afterwards and add the highlights. This is also where you want to kind of be careful that you're not over scrubbing that white underneath. There we go. Because some of the Snowcap lifts up here a little bit. That's okay. When I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll come actually add Snowcap over the top. But to give it the round effect, I'm going to add a dark sort of area around the bottom, and I'm going to do that with crimson. Crimson's a really dark red, and it will add that dimension for me. So I'm wetting that. Not too juicy, but just wet enough to paint with. And I just tap in that crimson underneath the bottom here. And it looks like we're going to have to keep working it a little bit too, because it's lifting up a little bit of the Snowcap. So if that starts to happen, don't worry about it. I'm going to show you a way we can come back in here and add some on top to give it dimension and do another layer. So I did this painting before, and that's exactly what I had to do. I had to come back over it with the Snowcap, giving it the highlights where I wanted it, and then come back in with that crimson again and give it a darker. And that's what we do. We just have to be patient and wait for it. So while I'm doing that, I'll work on these little berries a little bit. I'm going to dry my brush and just kind of tap in here so I can get rid of all that white extra area here. And I was using watermelon for this. So that's what I'm going to use again. And a couple things that we want to do with these berries is we want to also use that crimson and come around the bottom. And I might switch to a smaller brush for this part. And the crimson in my palette is kind of dried out, which is kind of what I want, because I don't want it to be too inky and overwrite the and overpaint the watermelon that I have on there. But adding that around the bottoms is going to add a level. It's going to separate the berries for one thing, and then it also creates that look of being round. You don't have to do a whole lot. Your eye, basically, the viewer's eye does a lot of that work for you. You just have to put that, you got to put a hint of it in there, just a suggestion. You notice I tap off on the paper towel if I think that's too wet, and that helps me keep from making a mistake here on my actual painting. So you might be able to tell these berries are actually starting to take form a little bit. We're going to help it along here in just a second. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little Snowcap, clean my brush good, take a little of that Snowcap, which is dried up pretty well on my palette over here, so it's pretty thick and paint-like. And I'm just going to put a little dot on each one of these. Right in the light area, this It just indicates the light's kind of hitting on it. There we go. You can soften that a little bit if you want. But there we go. So we have the berries there. That the Snowcap will kind of blend into the red paint underneath, a red alcohol ink underneath, and it will look more natural. So when you first put it down, it's very stark white. But as it starts to dry, it actually blends with what's underneath it. And, you know, it's something to get used to when you're working with Snowcap. But it really does help in a lot of situations since you can't really paint with white alcohol. So, all right, here we go. We're going to come back in here. This isn't 100% dry, but I know that this area in here I want to be my highlight area. And so I'm just tapping that in around here. And I'm tapping in down here because it had lifted a lot of it up. And just blending that up too. Might as well blend it down till you get it kind of blended together where it looks kind of natural. And you can actually see it happening here. That Snowcap is blending with that, with the red underneath. I want to soften up the edges here so it doesn't look so stark. There we go. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Okay, let's let that dry for just a minute, and then we'll come in and do our finish. We'll finish that and do our rest of our finishing touches. All right, now this is dry just a little bit. I want to start off with the crimson over here. Let's get that wet in my palette again so I can come in and tap that in down here. And notice I'm tapping, I'm not going back and forth because it's still a little tacky. I could have waited longer, but chose not to wait longer because I wanted to make sure that we got to finish this project in a decent amount of time. All right, so now coming in with the watermelon. And you can feel free to try, check out all the different colors that you might want to use. You might not want to use red. You might want to use something different. So feel free to use whatever colors you want to use for your ornaments. And I'm just trying to get that under control. It's trying to spread on me. There we go. Now I was thinking maybe I could try a little bit of sepia down here, but I'm going to wait till it dries. While I'm waiting for that to dry, I am going ahead and pull out my Pinata Gold. Give it a good shake. You'll hear the little shaker inside shaking. It's mixing up that metallic. And I have a little weld palette off to the side here that I've used for the gold before. I'm just going to put some into my container here. There we go. It's a few drops. It's really, I don't know if you can see that on camera, but it's just that those metallics are just shimmering in there. And it's really, really a beautiful color. I'm going to switch my brush a little bit here. I'm going to use this round brush. Let's see, this is a number 4 round here. I'm going to use that. Make sure there's nothing on the brush. And I'm going to come in here and put a little bit of that. I like to go around the edges where it's kind of had a chance for the alcohol to kind of dry out of there a little bit. And I'm just going to start tapping in here this little ornament cap with the gold. I'll add some more layers to that, but what I'm going to do here, I also have a gold acrylic pen. This is that's a Yuho brand. Well, it's an off brand that I got on Amazon, and I'm going to come in here. Let me just make sure it's Friday, and very carefully, I'm going to put in a little hook. See, this is an acrylic, so it will actually show up on the black background. Alcohol inks are transparent, so they do not. So I put that in, and then I'm just gonna come up here and put my little hook for hanging. There we go. See if I can come add another little bit here. And I need a little bit more of my Snowcap in there, I think, too. Right in here. There we go. Getting a little red in there. I don't want to do that. I'm getting really close. While I'm still waiting for all that, I noticed that I'm gonna get some clean alcohol into a container and blend together some of these leaves and branches here, because there's some white showing up that I don't want showing up there. So I'll come back in with some of my citrus and just tap that in. And these paintings, I could spend, this one I did very fast, but I sometimes can spend an hour, 2 hours on some of these. They're fun to do, and the more detail you want to put in it, the longer it's going to take you, but that's okay too. Okay, and I want some of this branch to come down into here, so let's work on that a little bit. It's going to be a little bit of a surgery, and I want to lift out a little bit, so I'm going to kind of come in here like that and lift up. I'm going to take my Snowcap, put something on the brush there, and bring that into here a little bit. It doesn't have to be a whole lot, just sort of a hint of it coming over that ornament a bit. Going back to Mojito for this. And this looks like one I might have to do a couple layers to get it to look right. I'm getting red in back there, which is not what I want to do. So I just clean off my brush, come back in. It's so forgiving working with alcohol inks. Thank goodness. So what's happened here is this Snowcap is sort of dried out my palette a little bit, but it's actually working to my advantages because it's allowing me a thickness to kind of come over the bulb with that green. And I'm just going to come in right on top of it and just, there we go. I think that's what I'm looking for. Close enough. I could continue futzing with it if I wanted to. Gonna come back with the gold and work on my little cap here for a little bit. Now that I put the white on it, it really kind of helps it. I might have to come in here with a little Sharpie and kind of refine the edges. I do that sometimes and it helps. Okay. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Let's see. There's like white around the edge here. Gotta get rid of that. We need to come around the edge with the dark crimson, I think, a little bit. Yeah, that's exactly what I needed to do. Yes, good. Sometimes you do that, you have to blend it out a little bit. So you see I'm just kind of dragging my brush a little bit with that. I want to do it very light-handedly because I don't want to pick up that snow cap that's underneath. And I really wanted the the highlight to be right in here. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more of the snow cap in there. Come back around with some of this, what color is that? Watermelon. And getting the values is what makes it look realistic, so that's why I'm trying to spend a little extra time on that. Okay. I want it to be thicker in here, so that's why I'm adding a little more Snowcap and then crimson. And I think I might add a little sepia, because that's what I have here. The sepia is like I'll show you what color sepia is. See, this is sepia. It's very a dark orangey looking red. And move that down here. I'm starting to get some separation with the background of that snow cap, so I'm just taking my brush and pushing it back over. That's because I'm not being patient enough and letting it dry between the layers. But you won't do that. You'll give it enough time to dry. Sometimes when I do these demos, I try to rush things, and that's just not what you should do. Really. So just learn from me. Don't rush it. Dry between those layers. Here we go. All right, that I am going to say is done, but you know what I'm going to also do? I'm going to actually come in here with this and kind of use the acrylic to give that a little bit more, punch, because the gold was mixing in with my snow cap. Because again, I didn't let it dry, but this looks really good, I think. Now, one of the things I want to do is I want to sprinkle some gold on here, mist some gold onto the plate. So let me just make sure that I have some. I want to make sure that my gold is sort of wet. So pour just a little bit of alcohol directly into the palette with my gold and give it a stir. There we go. So it's nice and wet. You see that? And then I load some on the brush. And so what I do is I take another brush and I just tap just ever so lightly. You don't want to do too big because you don't want it too big of splashes. But that gives a little, like a little shimmery snow effect in the background a little bit. And a little more festive. There we go. So thank you for watching this demonstration. If you like what you see and you like to see with the collab team, it really gives us a huge boost if you let us know. So let us know in the comments. If you're on Facebook and you do these projects, make sure to please share in the Alcoholic Art community group. Just because we want to see what other people are doing. We want to see your version of this and how you did it. And you're probably going to generate questions along the way. We're happy to answer those as well. So we will see you online. Thank you for watching and have a great holiday season.